Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm pleased to be able to speak in today's debate, and I'd like to remind Chamber that I'm a nurse, but I'm also Deputy Convener of the Health and Sport Committee, and I too welcome the Minister to her new role. Every life does matter and suicide is preventable, and the Minister has said this already. Suicide is an extremely difficult subject to speak about, and just one person taking their life is one too many. And many of us across Chamber have already described personal experience, and I listened quite intently to Angela Constance, my colleague, about her experience in her job prior to coming here. But many of us have had constituents who have presented even with thoughts of ending their own life themselves. And it's our job to be there, to help, to support and to listen to anyone who presents with mental health needs. I'd like to focus my comments today on two aspects. And it's the causes of suicide and then suicide prevention, particularly in rural areas. I represent the South Scotland region. It's rural. I often tell people I cover Feed Dunbar to Stranraer. It's a rural region. And when assessing the Government's Every Life Matters action plan, I specifically looked for evidence to support rural interventions. And the National Guidance on Suicide Prevention planning tool is actually part of the guidance that has been set out in the National Plan. And this National Guidance on Suicide Prevention in rural areas is presented so that we can look at tackling suicide and prevention specifically in rural areas. And it needs to be used in conjunction with Part 2, which sets out the evidence-based approach. There is rationale for focusing on rural suicide. There has been significant changes over recent years in terms of ageing population, a decline in farm incomes, economic pressures to diversify, increased environment pressures and associated legislation, along with depopulation of some areas and change in labour markets, as well as increased international competition. But no single pattern has emerged in the research as yet as to specific rural causes of suicide. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to meet with former MSP Jim Hume, who is chairman of Support in Mind. And Support in Mind is a charity that's carrying out vital work to support those working in the agricultural sector who are experiencing depression, feelings of isolation and suicidal thoughts. They do this by working collaboratively with NHS boards, third sector organisations and others, mainly by listening to people, directing them to professional support and by reminding them that someone is there to help. I'd like to give recognition also to another group, another organisation to support our rural communities, and that's the Royal Scottish Agricultural Benevolent Institution. It's also known as RASABI. Earlier this year I met with CEO Nina Clancy, and Nina said that RASABI aims to provide relief for hardship and even poverty to those working in Scottish agriculture. To date, it has helped many farmers, crofters and agricultural workers who may also be experiencing symptoms of poor mental health. RASABI has also engaged with Police Scotland to work with firearm licence officers who have agreed to provide RASABI contact information when carrying out firearm checks, and that's quite important. However, Presiding Officer, out of the 680 Scots who have taken their own life, 20 of those lived in Dumfries and Galloway, and they took their own life in 2016. Two-thirds of them were men. And today I won't repeat statistics, but I want to focus on the fact that behind each number is a person, an individual and their family, all of whom are affected by this tragedy. This is why it's extremely important for authorities, government and healthcare professionals to learn from each experience, to listen to families and to implement effective policies to ensure such an event is not repeated. I welcome the commitment to mental health first aid training. I will endeavour to engage in it myself. As a general nurse, I have not had any engagement in this type of training myself, but I will be happy to participate in the training and support others to do so. So the training will allow for the creation of mental health first aid responders who can be trained to provide immediate emergency support. And Alec Cole-Hamilton mentioned the importance of talking therapy, which is really important, face-to-face therapy. But I've also seen digital technology that can be used, such as an app called the Thrive app. And I found it while I was researching the Brothers in Arms information page. And one of the comments on the app noted, it's not just Brothers in Arms, it's for sisters too. Absolutely.
Alex Cole-Hamilton.
I'm very grateful to Emma Harper for taking my intervention. Does the member agree with me that that whilst there are great apps out there, that things like Beating the Blues, which is the go-to online referral technology which is used by NHS Scotland, is regarded by stakeholders as being somewhat out of date?
Emma Harper.
I thank Alex Cole-Hamilton for that intervention. I'm sure there are apps that have been used in the past that are a bit out of date. I think there is importance in engaging with whatever tools we can that will get people to talk. And one of the evidence I learned from the Brothers in Arms was that a lot of men don't want to talk, but a wee app is somewhere that can open the door to access to proper professional help and treatment. So I welcome your intervention. Thank you. There's been a local group established in my area called the Retired Farmers, and it's organised by Jill Rennie with health and wellbeing funding. And its job is to participate with a collaborative approach with Teresa Dougal, who's the manager for NFU Scotland. And Teresa and Jill have been widening the participation for retired farmers, and specifically they're looking at dealing with isolation. So, Presiding Officer, I know the time is short, so finally, I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome the 10 action items, the comprehensive measures set out in the programme for government to tackle mental health issues, and welcome the commitments in the suicide plan. And I look forward to seeing the actions implemented and scrutinising these as part of the Health and Sport Committee. And I look forward to the evidence of maximum impact of this, because, again, every life does matter and suicide is absolutely preventable.